Hey everybody, and welcome back once again. Today we have a really fun, simple experiment. Just involves two ingredients. Some of you might be familiar with this. I know some Leshai students have maybe done this in some other classes in the past. So today we're going to make what a lot of people call oobleck. So it's sort of a slime. And all we need for this experiment is water and cornstarch, which is something that you can get at the grocery store. You might have some in the cupboard. So what we need to put this in is a container of some sort. I'm going to use this. You can use a jar. You can use something in between, but just something to hold everything. And then you also want to cover your area because it can get a little bit messy. So I'm just going to put everything on this baking sheet. You can use newspaper or a towel or something, but just cover things so it doesn't get all over the place. You definitely don't want to do this on the couch because if this gets on the couch, it can be kind of tough to get off. All right, so when we mix our water and cornstarch, we want to make 2 parts cornstarch and 1 part water. So that means we want twice as much cornstarch as water. So I'm just going to use 2 cups of cornstarch and 1 cup of water. I'm going to put 2 cups of cornstarch in my container. It's a lot of cornstarch. You can see it's even getting sort of all in the air, even though I'm not trying to be careful. So yeah, I want to cover everything. And then I'm going to put 1 cup of water in there as well. And then we are going to mix it, and then we're just going to explore it. Just kind of see what happens. So I'm going to use a wooden spoon to mix. You can use whatever you have available. You can use a fork or whatever you have. And it's going to be a little bit difficult to mix, but keep at it, and you'll get it nice and even and not too long. And it'll turn into sort of a paste, sort of like glue even. And so while we're mixing it, I should say you can keep this in this form for a while, but you would want to put it in a container where it's going to be airtight. So you can put it in a jar with a lid or a plastic container with a lid. But if it is left out without a lid on, it will dry out and it will not be the same as it is now. It'll get very, very, I guess, hard because it'll dry out. So I'm going to keep mixing. I think we're almost there. And also, when you do want to get rid of this, you don't want to pour it down the drain because it could clog the drain potentially. You can really just let it dry out, and then you can either compost it or just throw it away. That's probably the best thing to do. If you do pour it down the drain, make sure you use plenty of water, and that should be okay. But yeah, probably best to just let it dry out and then compost it. All right, so now that we are, I think, pretty well mixed, noticing some really interesting things here. It feels like it's breaking, but then it sort of just turns into liquid. So I'm going to bring the camera closer here, and you can see what I'm talking about. So as I'm mixing, see, it looks like it's sort of breaking with itself, and then it just turns right back into liquid. So that's really, I don't know, it's strange. Not like water or any other sort of liquid like that we're used to. So I'm gonna see, well, let's just see how it feels. It's kind of sticky. It doesn't really come off on my finger for the most part. And it feels like if I just put my finger on top, my finger sinks. But if I try to push, it feels really kind of hard. It's hard to push my finger down. So let's see, I'm going to take sort of a handful, if I can even grab it, yeah, so it sort of breaks away as I'm picking it up, and then just kind of turns into slime and slimes back in. So that is pretty interesting. So I'm just gonna let my hand kind of slime back into the container there. You can also wash your hand off, that's fine. Just make sure you use plenty of water, but you know, it's just cornstarch and water, so it's not toxic or anything. The main thing is just not to clog your drain, but if it's just what's on your hand, it should be fine. All right, so I'm gonna go wash my hand off, and then I have a few objects that I am curious how they will react on top of this stuff. So I'll see you back here in just a minute. So if you are making your own oobleck, I would encourage you just to play with different items that you have around and see how they react with this stuff. So just see what happens. So I have a dinosaur here. You might recognize it from the volcano video. So I'm curious if the dinosaur tries to walk on the oobleck, and I'm putting force on there, pushing it down, then it doesn't seem to go down too much. But if I just let the dinosaur kind of walk on the oobleck, it does sink. And I'm sure if it was deeper, it would sink further. So that's pretty cool. And so from what I hear, you can actually walk on this stuff if you're walking quickly enough. If you're just standing on it, then you would sink. Sort of just like quicksand. All right, so I'm gonna see if I can get him out. Now I also have a nickel. I'm curious if it will stay on top or if it will sink down. Before we try this, what do you think will happen? All right, well, let's see. So I'm just gonna place it on top, and it sunk. But not as quickly as it sunk in, say, a container of water. I also have a piece of paper. It's just a note card, and I'm curious if it will get wet. So if this was water, it would definitely get wet if we just put the note card in the water. But I'm curious if this is sort of wet enough for the paper to soak up the wetness. So let's see. Just gonna put it in there, bring it out, and it does appear that it is soaking up some water. It's kind of hard to see on here. On this side, you can see it a little more clearly on around the edges, but it does look like it's kind of wet. So that's probably what you would expect also. Let's see if it will just lay there on top of this stuff. Oh, and there you can really see it sort of getting wet from the material. But it is not sinking. So that's sort of what you would expect if it was placed in water, although not as wet as quickly. All right, well, that was fun. That was really cool and definitely pretty weird. So if you were able to make the oobleck at home, I hope you had fun experimenting with different objects. And again, if you want to keep it, just put it in an airtight container, and it should keep for a pretty good while. If it gets a little too dry, you can just add a little bit more water and mix it up again, and it will get back that consistency that we were looking at there. When you're finished with it, just let it dry out without the lid, and then you can compost it or throw it away if you don't have a compost. All right, I will see you next time. Thanks so much, everybody.